So, welcome back to Third Age Reforged and to another pair of battle replays actually, and as you may notice my voice is a little bit croaky today, and that's just typical. As soon as I get my PC back my voice starts to abandon me. But I actually had a comment on the last video asking why I usually only show sort of the larger scale battles. That often has to do with the battles that I get sent, and often I do prioritise the larger ones because they do tend to be a little bit more popular. But we will be showcasing a couple of 1v1s today, so this will be a slightly smaller scale affair, but it should still be just as long as a normal video because of course there will be two of them, and it will be between the same two people as well. So on this side we have Mob Narcissus, and on the other side we have Mech FFA Muffins. So Narcissus is the one that sent me both of these replays, so big thank you to him. And this is going to be on 0.96.1, it's worth mentioning as well, so this isn't going to be on 0.97 as you may notice from some of the names of the units. They are still the 0.96 version. Some units such as the Gwythi Rockdoor for example are now named the Doomsman of Vada. But we will go through the army compositions and we will not hesitate too long because these 1v1s are fairly substantial. 21,000 frames is a fairly long one, but this is understandable considering these two factions because it is going to be Imladris up against Dale across the way there. So we'll start off here on the front line, and we will start off with the Eldar Quinga, which is kind of unsurprising to see them because obviously even basic Elven archers tend to be, well, they tend to have good damage values, sort of above average for sort of standard line archers as it were. And also of course elves in general have got good accuracy. The problem the Eldar Quinga will have is that there are less of them per unit, and of course in relation to a lot of the other Imladris units they are lightly armoured as well. They do not have the armour upgrade either. So in a skirmish fight they might not be terribly efficient, especially considering that Dale can certainly bring an awful lot of skirmishers should they so choose. We also have some NORTHMEN warriors over here which actually don't offer too much more in terms of their ranged presence. In fact maybe slightly less because they have actually less men per unit, so they might actually be less of a threat at range. But they do offer a little bit more in terms of melee, which obviously Imladris in general have got a lot of melee expertise, so when all of their skirmishers are out of ammunition, to have that little bit of extra punch is also quite nice. But obviously the NORTHMEN warriors here are going to be definitely engaging in some heavy skirmish with the Dales, well, the men from Dale across the way. Then over here, perhaps a front line, or well, obviously very limited as Imladris' front lines tend to be in terms of numbers, but not in terms of quality. But it is a front line you would expect to see maybe more from Linden than from Imladris, because we have a combination of the more standard line infantry that they have available, the Eldar Makar, again, pretty much the only infantry unit that Imladris has that has nothing in terms of armour, in addition of course to the Eldar Etar. But in behind them they are backed up by a pike unit, the Imladris Sentries, which are a very strong pike unit indeed. Outside of the multiple HP pike that Lothlorien have available, they certainly throw their hat into the ring as being the strongest pike unit alongside stuff like the 1st Legion and the Naru Naaru Sentinels. And then back here we have some Imladris Guardians, again without the armour upgrade but still a very solid line infantry unit indeed, very strong in fact, arguably the strongest sort of more standard line infantry unit you can bring in the game. And then we also have the Gwythi Arthand as well, which of course as far as multiple HP spears go, probably the toughest to bring down in prolonged melee in the game. They don't necessarily do damage very quickly, as I've said numerous times before, and they will be sort of maintaining this functionality in 0.97. The Keepers of Aglos, as they are going to be sort of renamed, have largely the same functionality in that, so numbers might change but overall the way that you use them will not. Then we have the Eldarenwe Harumiro. Obviously they are going to be renamed the Eldarenwe Standard Bearers. Very, very strong on the charge. I believe they're one of the few sort of non-multiple HP units that has the full charge bonus of 20. I might be wrong about that, but I'm fairly sure they do have the 20 charge bonus. And obviously the Eldarenwe Harumiro also have that elven skill in melee, which allows them to stand up a little bit better against other cav units. They are still lancers, however, so you know, in terms of efficiency you would be much better off using the spear cav or the knights for that sort of dirty work. Over here we have the Imladris Riders, again without the armour upgrade, so he hasn't gone too much into the armour upgrades here, Narcissus. But the High Elven Horse Archers, of course, very, very solid, and if you upgrade the armour actually even more so, because it does mean they can take a bit of a beating at range as well as give a bit of a beating with their higher missile damage on average to other Horse Archers. But as with most things Elven, you cannot afford to bring a unit like this in as much numbers as sort of the more Horse Archer centric factions like Rohan and Khan can afford to bring theirs in. Meanwhile, as I'm sure was noted previously when I mentioned them before, we do have the Gwythi Rockdoor, which of course the High Elven Knights, very, very strong. This is where the High Elven General is going to be, or the Imladris General I should say. Obviously we know what Knights are all about. The Kings of the Open Field, very, very strong indeed. And then more Eldar Winger actually over here, and then another unit of Imladris Riders. So that's going to round out Narcissus' army. Very wide, but very elite. We'll see how Dale chooses to deal with them, which I imagine will be through trying to whittle them down through a skirmish fight. So we have the Lake Town Bowmen, which obviously are cheap. They will be getting arguably the biggest overhaul of all the Dalian units in the upcoming 0.97 patch, because they will be hybridized between what they are currently and the Lake Town Infantry. So they will essentially be a sort of a cheaper line archer, but also a cheaper line infantry. Gives them a lot of functionality. You'll be seeing quite a lot of them, I imagine, because that very efficient type of unit in general, just the concept of them. And there are going to be 2 of them on either flank, so again they're just going to be trying to sort of get what value they can off the high elven units across the way. And then we've got some Dalian marksmen, which of course are better in pretty much every way, but obviously more expensive as well. The Blackshot Dragon Slayers are going to be a pretty important tool for Dale here, because Dale in general, they do need a way to deal with knights in particular, and the Blackshot Dragon Slayers are just that. They can definitely snipe them out, and that's where King Brand is going to be hanging out today. He also has the Dalian Royal Guard, which again, multiple HP, good in melee. They're not the armor-piercing missiles that the Blackshot Dragon Slayers have, but they are still a very fine archer unit nonetheless. So overall, I would certainly give the foot skirmish advantage to Dale, and we'll see if the Imladris Riders can tip that in Imladris' favour at all. And then we have the Dalian front line, which is going to be a combination of Barding Herd and Lake Town Spearmen. I would be surprised. Well, actually, no, it is just Barding Herd and Lake Town Spears by the looks of things, in addition to some Dalian Spearmen. So again, good mix of AP and holding power. I wouldn't imagine this is going to kill off the Imladris units all that quickly. The Barding Herd with their AP can certainly make a dent, but most of this being spears, this is definitely just a preventative measure from Imladris essentially rolling over the Dalian forces. And then in the back we also have the secondary line of Lake Town pikemen staying out of reach of the High Elven archers to sort of come in for that secondary line again. The phalanx, one of the ways that you can certainly fight the elves is to use a lot of pikes to keep them at arm's length to prevent their melee defense from coming into the equation. But certainly Dale are going to be relying on their skirmishers to do the vast bulk of the damage here, and these 2 units of Elves of Dale are definitely going to have to be used defensively against that Imladris Cav. So without further ado, let's begin. So again, the Dalian front line. A little bit surprised to not see something like the Elves of Esgaroth, or maybe something a little bit more serious in terms of infantry, because if Imladris came forward in force, like they can often do with a full infantry stack, it would have been very difficult for Dale to mitigate the damage that they would cause from that. And you can see here that the Imladris Riders are going outright. The Imladris Riders are an interesting pick. I mean, horse archers in general can be countered pretty harshly by foot archers, simply because they don't have as many unit models. And just in general, you know, it's very inefficient to skirmish with foot archers, or skirmish foot archers with your mounted cavalry like this. But, you know, they are high elven, so that accuracy, that skill could certainly come into play. And you can see that they are immediately coming out around the back here to try and get some skirmish on the squishier targets like the Lake Town Pikes, for example. Even the Barding Herd, you know, they may be shielded and heavily armoured, but over time they are still a phalanx unit. You can see that this is the problem that the Imladris Riders are going to have. They are going to be little more than a harassment tool, particularly against Dale. Dale certainly has the ability to absorb a great deal of arrow fire, even from the elves. A lot of armour, a lot of shields all throughout their army, and of course their archers are going to be very, very ready for the horse archers coming in and out of this area in particular. So Dale definitely with a good all-around position they have, although over here you can see that the Imladris Riders already, because they are shooting into sort of the sides and back of the Elves of Dale, the shields are not coming into effect, and they're not multiple HP either, so these arrows finding their mark and actually killing off a good deal of the Elves of Dale. So FFA Muffins is going to have to respond to this somehow, and he is turning them around now. Obviously this is taking an effect on the Imladris Riders as well. Many of them have already fallen to a very basic unit of Lake Town Bowmen. And obviously the Lake Town Bowmen, it's very, very easy to be cost effective with cheap archers in 0.96, as I've said before. It's not going to be quite so easy in 0.97. The more expensive archers will certainly be made a little bit more worthwhile. But here the Lake Town Bowmen already getting some nice value off the Imladris Riders. But FFA Muffins is kind of just sitting here allowing the Imladris Riders to shoot into these units. And actually Imladris' foot archers are still hovering out of range of the Dalian main line. You can see here Shooting Circle is also being employed by Narcissus. I've never really found Shooting Circle to be overly useful in Medieval 2, purely because the horse archers can shoot in a 360-degree arc anyway. It's not like Shogun 2 where you need this formation, otherwise the horse archers will only shoot in front of them. That was a real pain. But over here you can see that the Imladris Riders are having a pretty good time of it. They do need to be careful not to overextend too far though. They're actually shooting into the Dalian Royal Guard, but the Dalian Royal Guard have got some nice missile damage on them, some nice accuracy as well. So So the Imladris Riders definitely need to be careful, especially if the Lake Town Bowmen come back here as well to add their arrows to this mix as well. Without the armor upgrade, the Imladris Riders will fall away a little bit more quickly. I'm actually surprised that the Earls of Dale are not charging out here just to sort of zone them out once again. It could lead to a very elongated fight, this, but I can see why Narcissus is doing this. Obviously, Dale certainly have the archer advantage, just to try and sort of pick away at his army a little bit, get away, sort of chip away at those superior numbers that Dale do have in this fight. Especially seeing as most of Imladris' infantry is not the damage dealers. We're not looking at the Gwythi Myrdain, for example, or the Eldarenwe Harry McKeel. Just looking at sort of pikes and basic infantry, which, that being said, should still be able to do a real number on a lot of these Dalian units. They're definitely going to be very reliant on the pikes and the Barding Herd to sort of keep a lot of those Imladris line infantry units at bay, otherwise it could be pretty grisly for the Lake Town Spears and the Dalian Spears. You can see over here that the Dalian marksmen are now firing into the Imladris archer line as well. The Northermen warriors getting into a position where presumably they will be able to shoot in as well, although Dale certainly with a very tight formation, quite boxed in here. But being very defensive, obviously Dale definitely a faction which can play in this way quite easily because of their very defensible skirmishers and their focus around their more heavily armoured units at the high end anyway. Blackshot Dragonslayers are moving. Blackshot Dragonslayers definitely need to be held in reserve though. I think that, you know, they are, otherwise the Gwythi Rockdor are going to have a very easy time sort of picking and choosing their targets. There's a lot of spears and pikes, which means not really a very soft and squishy Dale army for cav charges. But having said that, Blackshot Dragonslayers are still the only real way for dealing with the Gwythi Rockdor quickly, I would say. The Heru Myro, meanwhile, and the Gwythi Rockdor being used defensively here to sort of ward off a frontal charge from the Earls of Dale. See, well, the Imladris Riders still in the background there, still putting pressure on the backfield. See here that the Imladris Archer's doing a lot of damage here to the Earls of Dale, and I think that FFA Muffins is being a bit indecisive here with his cav. He has charged in over here at this point, and he is going to be able to do some pretty nice damage to the Eldar Winger, causing them to become shaken. Again, if this was a heavy lance unit, might have been enough to break them off, but they are melee cavalry. But even so, melee cav still has their mass off the charge, which does a lot of damage. And the Eldar Winger taking some casualties here, but I can't help but feel as though the Imladris Archers here, not really the centre of Imladris' plans. I think all the archers are here for really is to try and sort of siphon off a lot of this Dalian ammunition, which is being used now. As soon as the Dale ammo has gone, of course, then it turns into a pure melee fight, which is what Imladris really want. The Earls of Dale sort of trying to get more charges on the Northermen warriors over here. Several of the Eldarenwe Haru Myro falling away as well, so that's a good pick from FFA Muffins there to sort of take away this high value target, because again the charge on these guys is absolutely lethal. If it charges into a soft point on your infantry, it's going to be an absolute massacre, just like the Gwythi Rockdor. So trying to sort of peel away some unit models is going to be very important. Oh, excuse me. Meanwhile, the Imladris Riders still firing away. I think they're trying to get some kills on the Lake Town Pikemen, a very, very squishy unit indeed, so that's very understandable. They're also being massacred by the Dalian Royal Guard. So again, the Imladris Horse Archers not really proving to be all that worth it. High Elven Horse Archers, after all, are quite expensive, and the Dalians have been able to deal with them, yes, with the Dalian Royal Guard, but also with just the very lowly Lake Town Bowmen. So definitely punching above their weight there. Meanwhile, the the Eldar Quinger, I should say, are over here, skirmishing with the Dalians, but again, this is a fight which the Dalians are going to be all too happy to take. I mean, Dale definitely set up for a more of an elongated, more of a grindy fight, and I feel as though Imladris, against Dale in particular, where Dale can really sort of make their cheaper skirmishers pay against the elves, if you're Imladris in particular, what you really want to be doing is getting up into melee with them, because your melee skill vastly succeeds that of most of the Dalian line. Really only a few Dalian units are going to be any problem for you, stuff like the Girians Paladins, which are not here today. Your cavalry is also going to be more than enough to overwhelm them in melee, so I really feel as though for the most part Imladris are much better served being very aggressive against Dale and really testing the mettle of whoever is playing them, because otherwise Dale are liable to fall apart quite quickly under a charge from Imladris. We shall see though. Another sort of quite efficient unit Dale have in melee against the elves, which hasn't been brought, to the Swordmasters of Karnan, which are a little bit more skill based, a human Swordmaster unit, which obviously are not a match for elven units in the same category, but they would still be able to do fairly decently when they're supported against stuff like Eldar Makar. Combined arms is definitely Dale's best bet of taking on the elves, obviously. Mano y mano is really not going to cut it. Imladris are you know, definitely going to be better than pretty much every faction in 0.96 and 0.97, going 1-to-1 with people. There are factions which can do it. Numenor, Khazad-dûm. But even so, still a very, very cagey affair, this, you have to say. You can see now Dale are also cycling back out. The Elves of Dale coming back in for another charge. But at this point, the Elves of Dale are also looking pretty haggard. And the Elves of Dale are a very solid melee cav unit which can be used very defensively against a lot of this High Elven cavalry. In combination with spears, for example, the Elves of Dale would be able to probably bring down the Gwaithri Rockdoor over a period of time, but if this damage keeps flowing into them, that will give Imladris the impunity in the cav game. How useful that is remains to be seen with the defensive nature of the Blackshot Dragonslayers, who are already being used actually. What are they actually firing at though? The Wind Lancers not actually being used, so I would suggest that they are being pointed at the Gwaithri Rockdoor, which would definitely make sense. Arguably you could use them on the Haru Myro as well, but the High Elven Knights are so solid, so powerful. And the Blackshot Dragonslayers, particularly with what FFA Muffins has brought in his composition, I would say they're definitely the best bet of dealing with them. You can see over there the Imladris Riders right in the backfield, very, very depleted at this point in time. But definitely just trading blows at this point in time. Peripheral cav units are all that are being lost at this point. It is worth saying as well that a lot of these Imladris arrows are not going to be able to be used against the Dalian mainline, which means stuff like the Lake Town Pikemen will not have to deal with being shot from range, which is pretty much their kryptonite. They will be able to sort of at least try and put up some resistance against those High Elven pikes, which is going to be important for Dale's line to sort of hold itself together. We shall see if this cagey affair continues, which I imagine it would. 21k is obviously a fairly long battle as far as a 1v1 goes. Northern warriors a little bit depleted at this point, but still firing and still doing damage as well to the Elves of Dale, which you can see over here. Again, more unit models being hemorrhaged. Dale sort of reorganising themselves, pushing a little bit further forward as Imladris have been forced back. The grindy nature of this fight has not suited them, and that isn't too shocking, to be fair. I'm a little bit surprised at the composition that Narcissus has actually brought here, purely because Imladris are so well known. When they are used aggressively, their infantry can be a real terror for factions which are maybe a little bit lacking in ways to deal with that, and Dale is certainly that. Trying to sort of play Dale in a skirmish fight, particularly in 0.96, is probably not the wisest move Imladris can make. They can do it, but particularly with the units that they brought, I feel as though maybe a little bit more aggression is needed here by Imladris. Really sort of try and test every angle of Dale. Any mistake, after all, can be really capitalised on by their very dangerous Knights and Lancers. Imladris just sort of shifting themselves a little bit. You can see that Dale moving into a position. I think these Dalian marksmen, actually, you can see that they have pulled out their axes, so they are presumably out of ammunition at this point. It's possible that Dale might be out of ammunition entirely, in which case Imladris can afford to sort of poke and prod at Dale. They're trying to go for the Blackshot Dragonslayers, but honestly it's not really worth it. You're not going to kill them off. Multiple HP, well armoured, all of that jazz. With a very depleted unit of Northern warriors, you're not going to kill off the Blackshot Dragonslayers in the quantity that you would need to sort of remove them as a factor. Very similar to crossbows in that regard, AP archers. If you're going to go after them, you need to be sure that you're going to kill the vast majority of their unit. Otherwise, you're better off going for something else, something that you know that you're going to be able to remove some unit models from. Maybe not the Lake Town Bowmen, but particularly something like the Pikes. Lake Town Pikes here at the back. A very fertile target for being shot. Actually, over there you can see that the Imladris Riders returning to the relative safety of the Imladris positions here. The Dalian marksmen charging forward. They are out of ammunition at this point after all. Imladris are kiting back, but I'm not really sure to what end. I mean, I suppose if Dale sort of stretches themselves out too much, that's going to be the moment where the Haru Myro and the Gwaithri Rockdoor can strike. But ultimately they don't have a genuine skirmish sort of... They don't really have that ranged power in their composition. So all they're really going to achieve by sort of kiting back to the edge of the map is just sort of changing the place where the actual battle happens. Maybe going back into the corner would also limit how wide the battle is, but I think Imladris honestly want the battle to be a little wider so they can use their lancers. The Elves of Dale still being given the business by these Northern warriors. Elves of Dale obviously not the fastest cav, very heavily armoured melee cavalry, and they are going to be able to get a frontal charge here into the Northern warriors. They have been, again, not too many in the way of losses there for Imladris, so definitely worthwhile. The Elves of Dale could be forced off here. How is the High Elven cavalry going to be used? This This unit of Dalian Marksman needs to be careful. The further away from its own lines it gets, the more open to a charge it leaves itself from the Gwaithir Rockdor or the Harumairo, which might be what is going to happen now, honestly. You can see that it has been a very cagey affair so far. Imladris have taken by far and away the more casualties as we sort of approach, and we are basically on the halfway point at this point. But when it gets into a melee fight, you would imagine that that is where Imladris' true strength is going to shine through. The Gwaithir Rockdor and the Harumairo are now coming forward to maybe try and charge into these Dalian Marksmen that have... yeah, they've really overextended themselves too far. Narcissus can feel free to charge into them, really. I mean, the Blackshot Dragon Slayers are there. I mean, the time will come when the Imladris player has to gather a bit of courage and tackle Dale in melee. And I'm honestly quite surprised he hasn't done that already, because he does command more powerful units in melee. The Barding Herd could be a little bit scary, perhaps, but with units like the Eldar Makar, you don't have to worry about the AP too much. We shall see. Imladris Riders here out wide. The Eldar Quinga still have ammunition, however, and are still poking and prodding at the Earls of Dale. And at this point, the Dalian cavalry is really in tatters. Not looking too good at this point. Northern warriors still trying to shoot into the Blackshot Dragon Slayers, but again, they're standing firm. Only a few unit models have been lost, and it's very clear at this point that the Dalians are just sort of saving that for the very deadly High Elven Cav. Or they could be trying to go for perhaps the Imladris sentries. Again, not a terrible target, but I would still say that Dale definitely need to bear that Imladris cavalry in mind. They may have a lot of halberds and pikes, but a few charges and this could all unravel pretty quickly. Lake Town Pikeman is not going to stand up too well in terms of morale when it's being trampled by one of the finest units of knights in the game. Well, these Dalian Marksmen definitely proving to be sort of a bit of an enigma out here on the front line, just sort of standing in front here. They may be closing now with the Norotino warriors, with the High Elven cavalry so far away. There's also those Imladris riders once again cycling back round, but I don't really see a great deal of progress being made here from Imladris, which is going to perhaps worry Narcissus a little bit. And again, he's retreating, but all he's doing here is prolonging the inevitable, I think, because the amount of damage he's doing with his skirmishes is quite frankly pitiful. And it's definitely not worth his while. I mean, honestly, I feel as though he's already missed a bit of a trick in this fight. I feel as though he should have been more aggressive right off the bat. Dale tend to hold up relatively poorly under aggression from Imladris. And I feel as though the horse archers in general were just a bit of a mistake. I mean, they are now getting into the back. They might be able to get a little bit more value now, killing off a few of these Lake Town pikes. But they're so depleted at this point that the DPS is not really there. And it shouldn't be too difficult for FFA Muffins to start moving forward. The fact that Dale are the ones being more aggressive in a fight against Imladris says it all, really. Now you can see that Dale Yap simply moving away from the Imladris skirmishers. I mean, eventually there has to be some sort of melee fight. I'm holding out for that anyway. This is the first of 2 matches, after all, that are going to be shown in this same video. Norotino Warriors just cycling over here as well. I mean, at this point, Narcissus is going to be entirely reliant on his cavalry to get some substantial damage done. That and his pikes doing a lot of damage as well. I mean, he certainly has a lot of powerful infantry over here. I mean, I can't really condone this playstyle either. I really don't like it when people kite backwards. It's a valid strategy, but that doesn't mean to say I have to like it. It seems cowardly to me the vast majority of the times it's used, especially when you have an advantage in melee. It's a very strange fight that Narcissus has been playing here. Meanwhile, still these very depleted units of archers are trying to do some damage. The Lake Town River Patrol have also revealed themselves, so that's Dalian Javelins, which that honestly is probably the best method Dale have at dealing with those Imladris pikes. Imladris are making a beeline for the corner, presumably so their pikes don't get surrounded. Meanwhile, these Lake Town Bowmen are fighting something. I think maybe they caught some cavalry units in melee. I mean, there are Eldar Quinga over there, but the Eldar Quinga are... well, the Imladris riders, for a start, are just being chased off by the remainder of the Earls of Dale. This honestly is not a terribly important fight either way, I don't think. Neither side has got anything too important to their efforts in this fight over there. Blackshot Dragon Slayers are moving forwards. Over here, the Dalian Royal Guard charging in. Now, I think this is being used as a bit of bait by FFA Muffins, because they're obviously going to kill the Eldar Quinga, baiting the charge from the Gwaithir Rockdor, which was honestly very, very underwhelming anyway. Baiting them into range of the Blackshot Dragon Slayers over there, which obviously definitely going to do a lot of damage with their AP on the Gwaithir Rockdor. The Wind Lance is being utilised. FFA Muffins does need to stay on top of this, however, because if he leaves his Dalian Royal Guard out here without support, the Gwathi Rockdor will just be able to cycle charge them into oblivion, and it will be a very short fight indeed. In sustained melee though, the Daily and Royal Guard are very damaging, very skillful, so the High Elven Cav definitely doesn't want to stay there for too long. The Lake Town River Patrol overextending themselves a little bit here. Any one of the two Imladris cavalry units, if they see the Lake Town River Patrol, are going to put them in a dumpster very quickly. Again, I'm not really sure this is the right target from FFA Muffins. I don't really think it's worthwhile going after the Northern Warriors. They've used up a lot of their ammunition at this point, surely. And the Lake Town River Patrol would be one of the best tools for dealing with those Imladris pikes, which is so deadly. Finally, it looks as though we're going to get a melee engagement. All of the action in this fight is going to be happening towards the tail end of it. You can see here the Lake Town pikes moving forward once more. Obviously, the Lake Town River Patrol can hide, so they can sort of mitigate range damage in that regard. But here we go. Now, this is an area where FFA Muffins needs to play this correctly, because in spite of Narcissus constantly retreating in this fight, in a pure melee engagement, he has the advantage. He has the range of the Imladris sentries, he has the efficiency of the Eldar Makar, he has the Imladris Guardians as well, which are stronger as line infantry than anything Dale has brought. And of course he also has the Gwathi Arthand, which they may only be spears with that spear malice, but they are very tough to kill. And this is what Dale are doing. They're going to try and collapse in, which is definitely the right way of going about things. Blackshot Dragonslayers are over here, and all Dale needs to do at this point is keep the Imladris cavalry away. And I feel as though then he's in a very good place. Where are those? There we are. We can see the Lake Town River Patrol actually going after the Gwathi Arthand, which I would go for the pikes, because here on the front line is where you're going to need the most support. The Imladris sentries are definitely the most dangerous unit in that regard. The Imladris sentries far stronger than the Lake Town pikemen that are opposing them. The Barding Herd are solid, but they're not going to be able to get into range of the Imladris sentries all that easily. And this could be where Dale's plan unravels, because he definitely needs to target the right units here. He has the surround. It's always better to be the big spoon in this situation on the outside of the crescent moon. But the High Elves, Imladris, definitely are a faction which can fight their way out of this sort of position. You can see here that here in the backfield the Eldar Queen are actually routing off under the Elves of Dale, the Lake Town Bowmen chasing them away. The Imladris Rider is not going to be too much of a factor. But here you can see this is a disaster, really. Dale not really targeting the right unit quickly enough, and this is going to allow the Lake Town River Patrol to be charged by the Elder Enway Harumairo, and obviously with their charges now cycling in are the Gwathi Rockdor. This is going to be the end of the Lake Town River Patrol very quickly. You can see that the projectiles of the Blackshot Dragonslayer shooting in here, but you can see how quickly this unit of Lake Town River Patrol has been utterly vanquished. Nice cycle charging in there. In and out like the tide, both of these two cav units are now charging as one. That should be enough to finish off this unit. Also, the Imladris Riders charging from behind, so this will be enough to break them, and because the edge of the map is right there, that is going to play right into Imladris' hand. You can see the centre of this Imladris line barely taking any losses. Those pikes are just far too strong for the Dalian centre. Out here on the flanks, meanwhile, the Gwathi Arthand are outnumbered, but certainly not outgunned. Here come the Dalian Royal Guard. Oh, excuse me. Blackshot Dragonslayers having to work overtime over here, and the Imladris Guardians over on this side performing the same role as the Gwathi Arthand over on the other side. Very solid. Again, most of what Dale have brought in terms of infantry is not too scary for Imladris to deal with, which is why I'm kind of surprised that Imladris kited backwards for so long in this fight. The Barding Herd can be good against Imladris, but only if they're supported by the best of the Dalian infantry, and the Lake Town units are most certainly not that. The Lake Town Spears are going to pose no threat at all to Imladris units like this. You can see over here that Imladris are now starting to sort of try and wrap around. The Dalian Royal Guard getting into melee might be a little bit of a worry for the Gwathi Arthand, particularly with the AP from the Barding Herd from the front. You can see here that this is about to be a disaster for Dale. The cavalry coming around from the back, the Harumairo getting up to charge speed.
Only half our force remains.
Getting to around the 50% mark at basically the same time, both of these armies, but I can't help but feel as though Imladris are in the ascendancy here, whereas the vast majority of this fight involved Imladris playing into Dale's hands a little bit, trying to skirmish with them, when that was Dale's main strength. I feel as though Dale undercommitting on their infantry quality here has ultimately cost them a little bit. And here you can see the Harry Myro actually managing to get a charge off into the Blackshot Dragon Slayers. They need to get out of there though, because otherwise those large, overly large Final Fantasy swords are going to be able to cleave through those cavalry units. But the Gwythy Rock Door also coming in for a charge, and those knights going to bisect the unit of Blackshot Dragon Slayers. Nice damage there. They are solid though, so they will be able to stand up to that better than a standard unit. The Lake Town Bowmen doing some nice damage to the Harry Myro. Over here you can see that Dale have started to overlap, and over on this side they are now going to be victorious. Dalian Royal Guard really helping out against the Gwythy Arthand. The Gwythy Arthand, however, as we've seen before, even in a losing fight, they will keep fighting for a long time, and unfortunately for Dale, they need support. They need these units to sort of start working up the line now, more so than later, because these Lake Town units are really struggling against the Eldar Makar and the Imladris Guardians. You can see here where the Imladris sentries just stood firm. The Lake Town unit's absolutely no match for them. The Lake Town Pikes sort of coming back a little bit, perhaps trying to help zone out the Cav. At this point though, the Blackshot Dragon Slayers and the rest of the Dalian archers that still have ammo have been working over this Cav, and at this point Imladris don't have much of their Cav remaining. The Harry Myro 12 going to try and charge into the rear of this position over here. The Barding Herd do turn around however, so they are going to need to get out of there. Halberds are not quite as dangerous to Cav as pikes are, but they are still extremely potent against it, especially with the AP. Here comes the Imladris pikes, which the Imladris sentries really have been... They've really been the obstacle which Dale have had no answer to really up until now. And even when the if the Blackshot Dragon Slayers get the chance to turn their arrows on them, they've used up most of their ammo already trying to deal with the Imladris Cav. There goes. That might have been an example of something WK found out a while back, however. They charged in there, and I think they got up to charge speed, and they charged into their own pikes. Which is a thing that can happen in very specific circumstances. That might have been what happened there, because I can't imagine the Lake Town Bowmen got a lucky swing on Elrond. So that's an interesting one. That might have been the first example of that I've ever seen in this game. If your Cav charges into your own pike line when they're in spear wall, and they get up to charge speed, it behaves kind of like how stakes behave, in that it instantly kills Cav units. At least that's what I was told. And that might have been the case there. Meanwhile, the Gwythy Arthand, the Bouncer forces is evenly matched. Well, now with the support of these pikes it might be. But the problem is Dale are going to lose pretty handily over here. You can see that the Blackshot Dragon Slayer is now presumably out of ammunition, so they are being committed to melee, which is obviously going to give free rein to what little Imladris Cav is left, but even so, the amount of chip damage they're going to be able to get with those cavalry units might be enough to tilt this battle firmly in favour of Imladris. Now here come the Gwythy Rock Door. A nice charge here. Well, that was a fairly limp charge actually, but they managed to kill off a single Blackshot Dragon Slayer, which is nice. The Lake Town Bowmen getting into melee in .97, of course. This will be much more their MO. They will be able to do this a little bit more easily, being sort of standard line infantry. Obviously, they still won't be able to go toe to toe with some of the stronger Imladris units they're being committed against here. But even so, a little bit more effective than they are right now. This is a bold move from Imladris' cavalry, charging in here where the Lake Town pikemen are still in decent numbers. But ultimately I can't imagine they're going to stick around for too long. I would imagine they're probably going to rout. But over here you can still see the Gwythy Arthand, only 3 of them remaining. Fighting hard till the bitter end is pretty much what they're all about. This single unit of Imladris sentries is having to hold back really the last hope for Dale in this fight. The Dalian Royal Guard is still here. Fairly decent number of Barding Herd as well. A number of Eldar Quinga are on the way over. That was not a cavalry charge. This, however, is charging into the very squishy Lake Town Bowmen, and it shouldn't take too much to rout them off, especially when the hammer is High Elven Knights and the anvil is High Elven Pikemen. It won't take too much more to rout off these Lake Town units either. Another charge from the Gwythy Rock Door is pretty much going to be the end of this Dalian force over here. Man, that guy got thrown off his horse very violently there. Still some Imladris riders left alive. Meanwhile, wavering. I don't know if the Blackshot Dragon Slayers inspire units around them. They may very well do. Bit of a sticky situation though. I mean, Dale still very much in this fight. They are taking some damage from the Eldar Quinga. Again, very fine margins in this fight so far. Dale have managed to sort of salvage the situation a little bit. Initially, that melee engagement went very heavily in favour of Imladris, but when Dale did start putting more pressure on the back lines, the front line looked a little bit less solid. These Imladris sentries still just holding the line. The Eldar Quinga doing some damage as well. You can see that this unit of pikes is now sort of breaking off, getting ready actually for the Dalians to make their way over here. Similar to the Gwaith Arthand on the other side, what was left of the Blackshot Dragon Slayers also fighting till the bitter end over here. This Cav could still prove to be the difference maker. Very few units of Gwaith Rockgore left, but still some hefty charges that they can commit to. Eldar Makar now moving forward with the support of these Imladris Guardians, which did very, very nicely against primarily Lake Town units. Yeah, I don't think that Dale can fight their way out of this one. I just don't think, most of their units are exhausted. They're still taking a bit of arrow fire from the side. And also there's that cavalry, which if things get hairy towards the end, obviously a nice rear charge can definitely turn the fight around. And now with more Imladris sentries coming in, this very depleted unit, finally this beleaguered unit gets reinforcements. Imladris Guardians, obviously they don't want to get the full surround because this unit of archers still has ammunition, which they're being very effective with. And now this is going to be the final stand, so Imladris are going to pull out a narrow victory over here. In spite of playing into Dale's hands in the early game, I would definitely say that in this matchup, Imladris, generally speaking, going to be much better off going for a more aggressive build. Much more of their high-tier infantry, that sort of thing. There goes King Brand. Ridden down by the Imladris Riders, of all things. The first units to engage. But yeah, I feel as though, in spite of playing into their hands a little bit here, I feel as though Imladris, overall, their superiority in terms of infantry was still always going to be something Dale had to try and deal with, and they didn't. I feel as though the javelins needed to be used against the pikes, the Blackshot Dragon Slayers. Maybe all of their archers needed to be used a little bit more efficiently here in the late game when the melee engagement started, because you always need to be prepared for Imladris, that Imladris infantry. It's very, very strong, and to be fair, Dale, it's not a great matchup for Dale in .96, I don't think. But even so, very well played to both players. Very, very close, of course. Within 10%. Still a fairly decent proportion of the High Elven army left, I suppose, considering how few men they generally commit to the field. This is going to be the end. One final Royal Guard in there, dying on the same battlefield that his king died on. And that is going to be the end of our first fight. Well played to Imladris, well played to both players.
Let it be a salve upon our wounds.
So let's see. Obviously, Imladris are always going to get more kills in this situation because they simply deploy less men. That's how the elves tend to roll. Let's see what did the damage for them. I would assume, obviously, very few. Well, a fair few kills on these lance units. Obviously, getting over 100 each, which is decent in a 1v1. But as expected, really, the pikes definitely the MVPs. 600 kills on that unit of Imladris sentries, and just shy of 350 on the other one. It goes to show how badly the Lake Town units are outclassed against the Imladris sentries, and while it may be tempting as Dale to go for some of your sort of cheaper infantry units and go for your more expensive skirmishers, this is the price you can pay. Because if you cheap out on your infantry line against Imladris, they will rip your low tier units to pieces. And this is a very good example of that, because the Imladris Guardians as well doing very, very well for themselves. Gwaith Arthand did get overwhelmed, technically speaking, but even so, they did still hold the line for a long time. So yeah, very, very potent units of pikes there. But that is only the first battle that I'm going to show today. We're going to be moving on to the second battle, which involves the same two players. And lo and behold, it's between the same two factions, which of course I knew beforehand, but it is going to be Narcissus this time playing as Dale, and we have FFA Muffins this time playing as Imladris. So it'll be interesting to see any differences in the composition. For Dale, not too much in terms of their archer line. They do have 2 units of Dalian Marksmen this time, as well as 2 units of Lake Town Bowmen, and they also have the Blackshot Dragon Slayers. I don't think, however, indeed they don't, they do not have the Dalian Royal Guard this time, which actually I kind of agree with. I feel as though going for a little bit more in terms of numbers for your skirmishes is going to serve you better here. And the Dalian Royal Guard did do some heavy lifting in melee last time around, but overall I feel as though the Blackshot Dragon Slayers, you don't need to spend any more money on elite archers than this in this particular matchup, just so that you can do some damage to those High Elven Knights. Back here, a very similar front line to what was before. We have Lake Town Spearmen and Lake Town Pikemen, and in addition to Barding Herd. Now, again, we saw last time how poorly this does against a strong Imladris infantry corps, particularly when it comes to pikes. But we'll see how Narcissus plays this, because again, the infantry is definitely not the main focus of this army, it's definitely the skirmishers. So again, Barding Herd here in a backup line. 2 units of Lake Town Road Patrol again. I agree with this pick. Cheap javelins can do very nicely against Imladris. The AP is very useful, but we'll see whether he chooses the right target. Again, 2 units of Earls of Dale. Again, the melee cavalry can be used very nicely defensively, but they can't really take on particularly something like the Gwythi Rockdoor 1-to-1. They will need support if they are to do that. We also have a unit of Greenwood Lumbermen, which is interesting. Obviously, cheap Axemen tend to be quite low on skill, which means higher tier Elven units will have no problem dispatching them. But they are AP, and they are numerous, so they do have their uses against Imladris. And then we also have 2 units of Dalian Cavalry, so we do have some Dalian Lancers as well, which could be very useful for dealing with some of that Imladris infantry if things get into a grind. Let's see what Muffins has brought instead this time, though. Again, we have 2 units of Imladris Riders again, which I don't really see the point against Dale. They're just going to be held at arm's length for too easily, in my opinion. They do have the armor upgrade this time, which will make them slightly tougher. But even so, I still feel as though overall they're not going to be as efficient as you would like against a faction like Dale, who are always really going to have a solid skirmish core. Again, 2 units of Noraturno Warriors. I think the Eldark Winger is stronger, just because they have more men in the unit, and the Noraturno Warriors don't really offer that much more in terms of skirmish power. But still, solid arch unit nonetheless. We have the Heroic Winger this time around, which obviously very good at range and in melee, but again, higher tier, so you do pay a price for that. We do have the Eldar Atar with the armor upgrade and the Eldar Makar. Considering how strong the Imladris sentries were last time, it's not too surprising that we are going to be seeing 1 unit of them. I'm actually surprised not to see 2, just like last time. Harry Myro there as well, so again very similar in terms of the Cav force this time around. But this time we have more in the way of Eldar Enway units, so we have the Heroic Winger, we've also got the Eldar Etar, so maybe a little bit more in terms of infantry, which I do agree with from an Imladris perspective. And then the Harry Vital, of course, very strong spears. Get my words out. But yeah, overall, minor differences. We'll see if that makes a big difference to the outcome. Overall, based on the amount of time this battle is, so 18k frames, I would still say that Imladris are probably going to sit back for the initial portions of the match, which again, I'm not sure I agree with. I mean, they do have a lot of units which might be a little bit vulnerable to Dale skirmishers, such as the Eldar Atar and obviously the Imladris sentries. If they get exposed to the archers for too long, even in spite of their good armour, they will still take losses, obviously lack of a shield, they are on multiple HP, etc. As the rain falls on the grassy plains. Dalian marksmen also moving forward. Meanwhile, Narcissus wasting no time getting into range to the main body of the High Elven infantry, which I do agree with. Put some pressure on them, make them make a decision, force them forward or make them kite backwards, just as they did in the last game. Meanwhile, the Dalian cavalry needlessly exposing itself, I think, to the Imladris riders. Imladris riders getting some very nice shots off in there. And now they're coming back again. I mean, there's really... I'm surprised the Dalian marksmen are not actually counter-skirmishing here, because FFA Muffins is getting a lot of nice value off the Imladris riders here, killing off several of the Dalian cavalrymen. And this is obviously one of the primary dangers to the superior Imladris infantry corps. A rear charge from lancers can cause a lot of damage regardless of how good your infantry is. The Imladris riders coming back, of course, so again, very touchy-feely here in the early stages. Nice skirmish fight here, the arrows being traded back and forth, which is again just going to favour Dale. The Noraturno warriors will be able to absorb a lot of this arrow fire, which will in turn mean, of course, the Imladris infantry is not exposed to it. Time will tell whether that is a worthwhile endeavour, however. Imladris riders, meanwhile, kiting backwards, the Dalian cavalry really just tanking these arrows with their faces, which is not really ideal from a Dalian perspective. They can't really afford to just sit here. They either need to charge forward and force the Imladris riders onto the defensive, or just retreat behind the relative safety of their own skirmishers, which at this point are still idle. Imladris riders going backwards. So again, easily going to be able to sort of kite back and forth here with this Dalian cavalry until they're largely defanged, as it were. Meanwhile, these Noraturno warriors only having to deal with sort of low-tier Lake Town bowmen. The Dalian marksmen are slightly better, of course, but even so, the numbers disadvantage they're at means that this skirmish fight certainly not going to go in their favour. The Noraturno warriors are also not the most heavily armoured of the Imladris roster, so even basic arrows will be enough to cause some damage. Meanwhile, these Imladris riders currently not shooting. Dalian cavalry is over here. They need to be careful, the Imladris riders, they don't get into range of the primary Dalian skirmish line. Otherwise they will be opening themselves up for a bit of a beating. A little bit surprised again that they're not going after these Imladris riders, going sort of underneath the skirmish fight, as it were, as the arrows are traded back and forth. They are completely untouched. Are they going to get shot by something? The Blackshot Dragon Slayers. And you can see here that the Imladris riders, based on the fact that they aren't being targeted by the Dalian skirmish line, are going to go for the Blackshot Dragon Slayers, try and do some damage here early on. Blackshot Dragon, that's the Imladris riders as well, so they may be trying to double up on the Blackshots here. Now I would imagine once Narcissus realises what FFA Muffins is doing, he'll probably redirect a lot of his skirmishers to shoot at the Imladris riders as they sort of bisect one another here. And some of them are starting to fall now, so yeah, you can see over here some of these Lake Town Bowmen and Dalian Marksmen starting to target the Imladris riders. The Blackshot Dragon Slayer is absolutely integral, after all, to the Dalian effort in this fight. Otherwise, once again, the Gwaithir Rockdaw and the Heru Myro will prove to be a very significant hurdle for them to overcome. Still, this unit of Imladris riders just sort of riding right in front of this Dalian infantry force. And still, sort of drive-by attacks here on the Blackshot Dragon Slayers. Admittedly, though, again, the Blackshot Dragon Slayers are going to be able to withstand a lot of this punishment, so there is a question of asking whether or not this is worth it. Even though FFA Muffins is able to get away with this, is it really worth it? Not the squishiest target. Again, I would highly question the use of horse archers against Dale in general, especially when Dale set up defensively with banked skirmishers like this. So I'm not really sure whether the Imladris riders were worth it in general, but we shall see. Here you can see that the Dalian archer line still doing damage, and at this point this beleaguered unit of Noritano warriors has taken an awful lot of damage over the course of this battle. Dalian cavalry just in behind the lines. So you're going to charge outwards at this point, as the Imladris riders do get a point-blank volley into a combination of the cavalry and the skirmish line, but they are forced back onto the defensive. Dalian Cav is quick as well. Can't sort of count on being able to outrun them, because they will charge into you, and those lancers, they think better of it, however, with the Gwaithir Rockdaw around. Those knights, of course, will absolutely dumpster Dalian cavalry in melee. They're still going to go in there. I mean, the longer that they loiter around here, the longer that these high elven arrows are going to find their mark. And that's both units of Dalian cavalry that have taken an awful lot of flak at this point. Meanwhile, here in the back lines, the Imladris riders starting to do some damage to the very squishy Greenwood lumbermen. Obviously, they aren't the biggest threat to Imladris in melee, but just the fact that the Imladris riders are going to be able to kill them off so easily and sort of deny Dale some of their numbers. The Lake Town Pikemen are probably the better choice, to be honest with you, just to sort of deny Dale more of their Phalanx units. Meanwhile, this is a very baffling decision. The Blackshot Dragon Slayers are being put way out in front. Meanwhile, the Dalian cavalry charging right in. They are going to be able to finish off this very depleted unit of Noritano warriors. That's going to be the end of them. But again, they were largely gone from the battlefield anyway. 15 archers, not going to be enough to tip the scale of this fight. So again, a token victory at best here for Dale. And there are the Gwaithir Rockdaw. The rain continues to fall, both water and arrows. Now the High Elven arrows trying to go after the Elves of Dale, give themselves some cav impunity in the late game, which obviously last time could have proved to be the decisive factor. That Gwaithir Rockdaw and the Heru Myro did get some very nice charges into the back of the Dalian infantry. Lake Town Bowmen continuing to fight. This cannot be a good engagement for Dale to take, surely. And yeah, the Imladris riders with the armour upgrade, they're not your bog standard unit of horse archers. You know, it's not like Eastmark horse archers they're fighting. They will be able to give as good as they get in melee, particularly with the armour upgrade. And the Dalian cavalry, as a unit of lancers, are just not going to do very well. And this is going to be the end of this particular unit. They're routing and broken the Gwaithir Rockdaw enough to utterly vanquish them. Now, Heru Myro actually charging directly into the front here. This unit of Elves of Dale caught napping, and Heru Myro actually able to get a very nice charge off onto the Dalian marksmen. That was enough to make them shaken. But even so, these Elves of Dale caught on their heels a little bit. There are the Lake Town Bowmen as well. So at this point the Dalian skirmish line is fairly far away from their infantry corps, which means the Elves of Dale are really the only protection they have against this harassment from the High Elven cavalry. And the Heru Myra is going to ride down Lake Town units so easily without any support. And you can see over here, the Elves of Dale are able to chase off the Imladris riders, but the real threat was over here with the Heru Myro. They're able to get more kills off on the Lake Town bowmen. So again, Dale hemorrhaging manpower, which is never a good thing against the Elves. Forward come the Elves of Dale. We'll be able to get off, get a couple of kills maybe. No, the Heru Myro, well, they have one kill. The Elves of Dale in a great big blob, which is still a significant hurdle for Imladris to overcome. Here you can see the Heru Myro obviously well shielded and well armoured, means they're going to be able to mitigate a lot of this arrow fire they're taking. The Blackshot Dragon Slayers are in close proximity. Once again, it's mainly Lake Town bowmen that bear the brunt of that charge. Good work here so far from FFA Muffins, however, peeling apart the vulnerabilities in Dale's defence. And so far this is bad news for Dale, because the skirmish phase has not gone well for them, and based on the infantry units they have, I can't imagine the infantry fight is going to go too well for them either. The last fight showed Dale's skirmish fight going a little bit better than this, and Imladris still went on to win. We'll see though. Only have one unit of those very powerful Imladris pikes this time around, so maybe they're not going to be quite as potent in melee. The Haru Vital, after all, will suffer that spear malice. And maybe the javelins can be the difference maker. They may be cheap, but the Lake Town River Patrol is still quite potent. Back come the Imladris Cav, definitely the MVPs for FFA Muffins so far. Bulk of his infantry is over here as well. There's still the Gwythi Rockdor here in the backfield. Heru Myro also sort of recycling themselves. Here come the Eldar Quinga as well. Or the Eldaranway Heru Quinga coming forwards. Obviously a very potent arch unit indeed, both at range and in melee, but they are only a single unit. They do need to be careful. Dale still have plentiful skirmishes down range, and they could find themselves utterly overwhelmed. And if Muffins can help it, he probably won't want to use Heru Quinga ammo on Lake Town bowmen, but he might not need to because he's in Imladris riders. Again, going to be able to ride down several of these Lake Town bowmen, which of course are very squishy in melee. A few more unit models for Dale there lost. Imladris riders over here. Once again, the Elves of Dale being committed forwards. Again, the Elves of Dale charging into basically units that we've already dealt with, so again it's really just token kills at best that they're able to get. Feeding on the scraps so far. Very cagey affairs both of these fights have been, very sort of skirmish centric, trading blows with cavalry and archers before then getting down to business, and in both cases Dale was not able to make their archer line pay against Imladris so far. That could turn around of course. The Norotino Warriors, this unit of Norotino Warriors is actually untouched, so Narcissus did manage to sort of focus down a single unit of Norotino Warriors. But ultimately there is still another one. They look like they're out of ammunition though, because they have pulled out their blades. Might be just a gambit here to try and get Dale to waste some ammunition. Not sure whether that's going to be successful, however. So again, a bit of a lull in proceedings here after Imladris was able to get some nice damage done to the Dalian forces. And yeah, Dale falling for the gambit here. Wasting some of their ammunition really on a unit of archers that is out of ammunition. And Norotino Warriors, of course, are pretty decent in melee. But still absorbing this arrow fire here is going to be a much better use of their time than getting the genuine infantry back there killed. Here come the Imladris Riders again. Very tired and tired, respectively. Don't know whether they still have ammunition. Horse archers do tend to have quite a lot of ammo at their disposal. But they are brandishing their swords here. Once again, Dale caught on their heels a little bit. The Imladris Riders, I think, are going to be able to get into the Lake Town bowmen. They lost their bottle there a little bit. And here at about the halfway point, Dale find themselves behind this time. Imladris with the advantage, and that bodes ill for Dale in a melee fight. The Lake Town units are not going to be able to cut the mustard as we've seen before. Barding herder there. Lake Town Spearmen. They are mere fodder before the Imladris infantry. The Blackshot Dragon Slayer is still capable of laying down a lot of damage. Greenwood Lumbermen as well. Unlikely to be too scary for the Elves to deal with their melee defence. Dale are definitely going to have to rely on their numbers here as they do move forwards. just go up to ×2 speed, I feel like, as they continue to trade blows. Again, however, the Imladris Riders losing their bottle a bit there. They were shaken once again. Here come the fire arrows, however. Might be enough to cause them to rout off, but in the end, no. They're a Lake Town River Patrol. Again, one of the more dangerous units that Narcissus has left. Still, the Imladris Riders proving to be a real pain. Just killing off individual unit models. Hemorrhaging the manpower that Dale have available to them on both flanks. And that is Dale's main strength here as this fight comes into what will presumably be the final phase, the melee engagements. I would still give the advantage to Imladris. They have that very potent cav. I don't think Dale have got the muscle in melee to be able to deal with Imladris. The Eldar Makar and Etar are just going to be too efficient, I feel like. I mean, they are going to take damage on the approach. The Eldar Etar in particular are not good at taking arrow fire. What is the High Elven Cav going to do? There's the real strength of the Imladris army there, the Haru Myro and the Gwythi Rockdor. Savvy play though, the Eldar Makar are just out in front where they were being shot, which means the shields will come into play. It does look as though we are going to get the genuine engagement here momentarily. Haru Quinga coming back into play now. Ooh. What have we here? The Imladris Riders finally caught. The annoyance is being brought to an end, the Earls of Dale finally chopping them down. But even so, definitely a very worthwhile bring. Here come the Eldar Makar. They're going to be charging into what would presumably be the Lake Town Bowman. Once again, Narcissus is going to try and get out of here, but again, he's stretched, and I don't feel as though this is going to be... I don't feel as though this is going to end well for him. The skirmish fight has already gone against him. And that, I feel like, was always where Dale were going to need to get a lot of efficiency off. At this point, they're going to have to stand their ground and fight. There is going to be no kiting here. What happened to those River Patrol? There are the River Patrol. They need to get into position. They need to focus down the important units, the Haru Patal, but in particular, the sentries. The sentries need to be destroyed. How potent they were was made abundantly clear in the last game. The Elves of Dale are still a presence on the field, but again, they're charging into Haru Patal, which... High Elven Spears, not the ideal place for the Dalian Cavalry to be. And there goes the really strong Imladris Cav out wide. Lake Town River Patrol are reloading. What are they firing at? They need to be... Well, they're going to be engaged here by the Imladris Riders, a very depleted unit, admittedly. Dale trying to hide behind their layers, which at this point could be a good idea to try and utilise their javelins. But Imladris are the ones that are pressuring the flanks, which is never the best thing. Here you can see the Dalian marks actually firing into the Imladris sentry, so this could be a good thing here for Dale. If Imladris are not able to deal with these skirmishes quickly, they really need to use their cavalry fast. There is a danger here that FFA Muffins has sort of sent his cavalry out too wide, and they're not going to be able to get in there. The Elves of Dale also still providing an effective screen, whereas at this point in the previous battle, the Elves of Dale were already a non-issue, having been thoroughly diffused. But here on the front line is where I really worry for Dale. The Lake Town Spearmen and Pikemen are going to be absolutely no match at all for the Imladris infantry. The Barding Herd will slow them up for a little bit longer, but even they aren't going to be terribly efficient against the more lightly armoured Imladris infantry that they have brought. There's the Haru Patal. Here comes the Cav, and at this point FFA Muffins has committed his infantry. He needs to be a little bit more decisive than he's being with his Cav, I think. Even if he sort of throws one unit of Cav under the bus, he needs to do something here. And the Lake Town River Patrol, this is the perfect opportunity for them, and they do get a nice volley off there into the Gwythi Rockdor. So overall, the structure of Dale's defence here has actually served them better. But over here, obviously, the Barding Herd is still getting crushed by a combination of Haru Quinga and sentries. Meanwhile, the Gwythi Rockdor over here charging into the Dalian marksmen that are shooting into their pikes. Blackshot Dragon Slayers are shooting at something. I would imagine it's the Cav. I think it's the Gwythi Rockdor, which is definitely going to be the best use of their time. Haru Myro charging in here. This is a bit of a nice catch here from FFA Muffins, managing to charge into the Lake Town River Patrol. What have we here? The Elves of Dale. over here on this flank as well. I mean, the Eldar Makar and the Eldarenwe Haru Hatal. The Haru Hatal proving to be not as effective as the Imladris Pikes in the same situation. More of a defensive unit after all. And the Barding Herd actually doing okay against that. But it's here on the front line once again where Dale are really struggling. I mean, the Barding Herd are doing their best here. Very heavily armoured, very tough to break down.
My lord, only half of our force remains.
But ultimately the Imladris infantry is just going to be too strong in the end, I think. And over here you can see that this line over here has collapsed. The Imladris sentries depleted actually, but still moving forward. And the Greenwood lumbermen, well, they are lumbermen, not soldiers. So their morale is not great, particularly when facing the cream of the crop when it comes to Elven units. The Lake Town River Patrol doing their best, but once again they are the main target of the High Elven Cavalry. Once again though, the Elves of Dale coming in, doing some damage. And there are the Gwythi Rockdor as well, charging in, trying to break off the Greenwood Lumbermen, I think. So pressure being put on there, but, you know.
Only half the enemy force remains.
Half of the Imladris force again. I feel as though Dale are falling behind here. They are technically winning on this flank, but everywhere else, at best, they're breaking even, which is not great for them. Forward come the Earls. Javelins being utilised, being flung. Pikes moving forward, but they're very depleted at this point, to be fair, the Pikes. We shall see. The Eldar Mikado going about their grisly work against the Lake Town units on the front line. Over on this side you can see the Harry Quinga wrapping up this end, whereas the Imladris infantry also beginning the process of crushing the Dalian front line. Blackshot Dragslayers over here. To be fair though, the High Elven Cavalry, the Imladris Cav, has been defeated by a combination of the Blackshot Dragonslayers, Lake Town Patrol and the Elves of Dale. So here, pretty much a textbook example of all the Dalian units being used in tandem, supporting one another to kill an on paper superior Cav force. Now this could be the break Dale was waiting for, because now the Elves of Dale can be used offensively, rear charging into that fairly squishy actually High Elven front line. They need to do that now, however, I feel like, otherwise they're not going to have too much in the way of infantry left. And that will allow Imladris to form a sort of death ball, which will be much more difficult to break down. Can Dale pull this back? They might be able to actually. I feel as though they're actually gaining the upper hand in this fight. The Blackshot Dragonslayer is now being committed to melee. Are they going to get a rear charge here on the Haru Hatal? No, they're not. This is good to see. So the Blackshot Dragonslayer is coming over here to support the front line. The Elves of Dale here have also got a very nice charge lined up indeed. Again, they're not Lancers, so they're not going to be able to do huge damage off the charge, but this pressure should still be enough to salvage this frontline fight for Dale. They're not going to have much left when all is said and done, of course, but this is still a very competitive fight here. Meanwhile, the Lake Town River Patrol being hunted by the Gwythi Rockdor, but they're very beleaguered at this point. Very damaged. The other unit of Lake Town Bowmen over here, meanwhile, is being hunted by the Haru Quinga, but at this point, FFA Muffins is in trouble, because the Elves of Dale reign supreme as the Cav force on the field. Very nice example here of Dale diffusing a superior enemy Cav force, as I said before. The Haru Hatal have very slowly but surely been losing to the Barding Herd as well. The Barding Herd supporting the Lake Town units over here, utilising their formation and superior numbers to slowly but surely grind the Imladris force down. Arrows flying in over here as well, so those Dalian marksmen still doing damage. They should probably try and target that Haru Quinga. Here comes the Gwythi Rockdor, but again, that is not the best target for them. Blackshot Dragonslayers are going to give them the business in melee. And how quickly this fight turns around, because that Imladris front line was looking fairly comfortable for FFA Muffins. Not flawless, but still, he would have won. Now, however, the Elves of Dale doing the damage. Eldarenwe Haru Quinga over there as well. Elves of Dale charging in. What have we here? Slowly turning this fight around, perhaps in Imladris, but elsewhere on the field things are looking pretty grim for them. Meanwhile, Lake Town River Patrol being charged in, so the Blackshot Dragonslayers can pull back out, I suppose. At this point, the strength of the Blackshot Dragonslayers in melee, as well as the power of the Elves of Dale off the charge, is going to be what Dale are relying on. They could probably do with dealing with these last few units of Gwythi Rockdor as well, just to sort of make sure that they can rout individual units off. Bounce forces evenly matched, so slowly but surely the Lake Town units once again have really let the team down here, because the Eldar Makar have managed to gain the upper hand against the Lake Town Pikes, and obviously that means that the Barding Herd starting to be closed in upon as well, shall we say. Forward come the Earls of Dale. They need to be careful though, because there are spears over here. And how well the Earls of Dale are used could very well decide this fight. Well, this Eldar Atar, again, another unit which has got an anti-cavalry bonus. The Gwaithir Roktor are a very scattered fight at this point. The Dalian marksmen still do have ammunition, as do Lake Town River Patrol, which is not great from an Imladris perspective. There are the Eldar Makar. Victory seems certain, only a fool could lose this battle. But the damage they've already taken could prove to be terminal. There are the Lake Town Pikes routing off, obviously low tier units. Not exactly the finest when it comes to morale.
Our men are winning the battle. If we continue like this, we will smash the enemy.
Yeah, I mean, I think that ultimately they've just got too much cav left, Dale, for Imladris to deal with. They've also still got that unit of Dalian Marksman that still has ammo. The Blackshot Dragon Slayers obviously still offer a very strong unit in melee. And yeah, Dale are going to win this. So very well played to Narcissus once again. A second win. And this time around, I feel as though it was an example of how to defuse the cav force. I feel as though that's where Imladris lost this fight. If their cav was used to its full potential, the Roktor and the Heru Myro, Dale's infantry and backlines would have been wiped out, and then the infantry fight would have gone in favour of Imladris. But as it was, the Earls of Dale, used in tandem with the Javelins and the AP archers of the Blackshot Dragon Slayers, used to good effect here. And this is a fantastic example of when layering is the right thing to do. Here on the open field with Dale against Imladris, they did very, very well. The Dalian marksman over here. I think the last of the Gwaithir Roktor actually perished at their hands. And this is going to be the end. I think this is going to be the end. So I think this is the last position where there is combat on the battlefield, and it's going to be the Heru Hatal, the last one standing. So as you go up to ×2 speed, victory is going to be Dale's this time around, and once again, a very, very close fight, narrowly going in favour of Dale. Just goes to show, you know, even in a matchup where I think Dale I honestly feel as though the Imladris Riders in both battles, regardless of the outcome, not the best thing to bring against Dale, because they can deal with it more easily than most. Total War Shogun 2. But yeah, I mean, I feel as though they were a bit of a waste both times. They are expensive. They're a high Elven unit, an Imladris unit. They're expensive, and they're not really not the easiest unit to use and get efficiency off against Dale with. Sorry, much better placed, I think, getting some more infantry as Imladris and really pressing home the advantage in that respect. Eldar Etar as well. Well, as soon as the announcer is done. I've always found the Eldar Etar as well, ever since they were called the Linden Longspears way back in Vanilla Third Age, I've always found them to be underwhelming. And personally, I never bring them, but that's just me. I mean, they are better in Reforged, admittedly, than they were back then as the Linden Longspears, but personally, they're a unit which I still feel like are a bit underwhelming, especially next to some of the better and higher tier Imladris units still. Obviously, Imladris getting more kills, but this time, not enough to win. Blackshot Dragon Slayers doing very well, obviously. Definitely the centre of the Dalian army here, doing that AP damage to the cavalry. Barding Herd doing very well for themselves on the front line as well. Obviously, they are real workhorses on the front line for Dale. AP, very, very solid halberds, one of my favourite halberd units in the game. River Patrol, not necessarily the most kills, but the kills were very, very key, shutting down that cav, and also the archers in general for Dale. That one unit of Dalian marksmen that survived into the late game, doing very well for itself as well. So yeah, big thank you to Narcissus for sending these battles in for me. Sort of a nice pair of 1v1s to sort of answer the person that was saying, well, usually I only do larger scale battles. Well, here, a couple of smaller scale battles for you, and I did mention to Narcissus before my PC went off for its repairs that I would be doing this. So yeah, good to see a couple of 1v1s on 0.96. Probably some of the last 1v1s on 0.96 I will be showing, to be honest with you, as 0.97 marches ever closer. The 1v1s that we'll be showing will probably be more previews on that build of the game. But yeah, next up, I think we will be doing either, finally, the Cardinal Runic RP battle that I've been sitting on for quite a while. I would have done that far sooner if not for the PC situation. But also I do have the Rivendell battles that I need to get through, so I think I will be probably showing another Rivendell siege in the near future as well. So yeah, hope you enjoyed this, and I hope you will join me for whatever is next.